Hello, and welcome to the second lesson of the Language and Technology Scheme of Work. Now, some of the lessons are quite straightforward to follow along with without these videos, but the videos I hope will just support you in sort of following along in terms of what you need to do slide by slide and kind of task by task. So this lesson is looking at perceptions of technology, so basically whether people view it positively or negatively. As you'll see on the PowerPoint, there is a spectrum line from strongly disagree to what should say strongly agree, to be fair, to make it even, and just four statements, and they are all statements about the impact of technology on language. There is no right answer here, but spend 5 minutes or so just position them on the line in terms of where you think they should be. As I said, spend about 5 minutes and then we'll come back to the slides. Okay, so the reason we did that first task is just to get a sort of a baseline of what you think in terms of how we use technology and how it affects our language use. But as you can see on the left-hand side of this slide, there are a number of different quotes that showcase kind of different attitudes throughout time in whenever there's been new technology invented and kind of the impact it might have on the world around us. So take a few minutes just to have a bit of a read of those, and what do you think is being implied about people's attitudes to new technologies? So hopefully what you'd have noticed is that actually every time there's new technology, people are quite skeptical about its use, or maybe make predictions that are not true. So earliest statement here, it says here, I watched his face closely to see if he was not deranged, and was assured by other senators as we left the room that they had no confidence in it either, which was after witnessing a first demonstration of the telegraph. The telegraph became quite a fundamental way of communicating between people. As we go closer to our time, you've got radio has no future, you've got the radio craze will die out in time, and obviously radio is still quite a fundamental part of what we do today. And even looking at the computers, so 1943, I think there's a world market for maybe 5 computers, and then computers in the future may weigh no more than 1.5 tons. Obviously, things that we've seen to be untrue. This is not to say that people completely miss the point with these new technologies, just that there's always a healthy dose of skepticism. People are always unsure about the wider implications of these new technologies, and unfortunately don't always get them right. So the first thing I'd like you to do off the back of this is to spend, it says 5 minutes, means spend 5 to 10 minutes, just devising your own possible positives and negatives for the role of technology in communication. Effectively, what do you think? What are the positives? So how does it make it maybe easier or more straightforward for us to communicate? What does it make more sort of simple for us in terms of how we communicate? And then what are some of the negatives? Start with how you utilize technology, what you do, think about you, your friends, your family, your social groups. And from there, begin to think, about national, global, international, any of that sort of stuff that might either be seen as a positive or a negative. Now that you've done that, what I'd like you to have a go at is basically, so there's 2 articles that I've attached to this lesson. There's The Digital Revolution Risks Injuring the Way We Think, and Wow, So Language, Very Technology, Much Changing. As you can see, one's from 2009, one's from 2015. Read through them, and they will give you examples of positives and negatives. Now, as you can see, the first one is about 11 years old, so therefore some of the ideas included in it might be a little bit outdated, but there will still be things that are relevant to how we use it today. When it comes to these kind of articles, these can be included in any of your wider reading, and they're good examples of what we call topical language. So topical language is a module that you'll do in year 13. It basically is about writing about language for people who are non-linguistic but intelligent. So The Guardian, for example, in this instance, is not a linguistic paper. It's not designed to teach people about linguistics, but when there's an interesting language topic out there, they will talk about it in a way that is designed for people who are not linguistic in any way. So it's just good to get examples of those texts because you'll be looking at more of them in year 13. So as I said, spend maybe another 10 minutes or so, read those 2 articles and add to your tables. Okay, in the past, these are some of the things that we've come up with as groups in terms of the things that might be worth sort of mentioning. So it says here the idea of around the world at all time communication, the idea that actually we can communicate with anyone in any place at any time, which obviously is very, very useful. It's time efficient, so if you need to talk to someone immediately, you can send them a WhatsApp or a Snapchat or something like that. If you want to, if there's no rush to get a reply, you might send an email. You can use technology to research and seek information. So that might be by going to forums or websites. And I've always said, the organisation of events has got a lot easier. So on Facebook, you might set up an event and invite lots of people, or WhatsApp, you'll set up a group and invite lots of people. So it makes those things quite straightforward. However, There is an argument about whether technology maybe impairs youth in particular, although I would say maybe older people have a similar issue where if you're constantly on your phone, the idea of being kind of social becomes an issue. Addiction, the fact that actually being on your phone becomes addictive and people start to get anxious if they're away from their phones. Obviously, you've got the issues of self-esteem and social media, the idea that, if you post online, how people can be quite horrible to people, and we're looking for likes and sort of people to acknowledge our existence, and if we don't get that, it can be quite damaging. Narrowing of the cultural capital, if you're using your phone but you're not really using it for anything in terms of researching or reading or looking around, are you really broadening your horizons? If you're just messaging the same people and not really talking about anything of any consequence, does it narrow what we're kind of potentially seeing? Potential harmful side effects, just the idea. I mean, there's significant things such as, if I keep going back to phones, but if we have a phone in bed and we're reading it before we go to bed, the fact that the lighting might affect our ability to sleep. As I've said just a little while ago as well, the idea of anxiety. There was a study that suggested that kids, not just kids actually, kids and adults couldn't be in a room with their phone without looking at it every 15 to 20 minutes because of the anxiety of missing out. And here it says also difficult to discern tone and meaning. Basically, if you message someone, especially on something like a WhatsApp or an instant messenger of some sort, occasionally jokes are lost, sarcasm is taken seriously, and people get really, really upset without people meaning to get them upset. What you'll see in the top right corner is two words as well, so synchronous and asynchronous, and these are just words I went through with other classes because they are fundamental to how technology works and how we communicate using technology. So synchronous is the idea that you will be communicating at the same time, so the idea being that I will message you as you are messaging me. So the example of that would be, I keep going back to WhatsApp, but WhatsApp would be an example of that. The issue there being that you can have overlapping in terms of, it makes it harder to sometimes understand what's going on, but it's time efficient. So if you need to talk to someone directly and they need to talk to you, you can get it over and done with very, very quickly. Asynchronous is the idea that you are communicating at different times. Now, this might be the email exchange, as I was talking about earlier, the idea that you send an email and then you wait for an email. They're really useful because they allow people to decide at what time they want to opt into a conversation. They don't have to immediately reply necessarily, and even sometimes your kind of WhatsApp chats or your instant messenger chats, they turn into asynchronous conversation if people don't reply immediately, because actually they're allowed time to respond to what you're thinking or saying. It's just worth bearing in mind what types of communication we have and whether they are asynchronous or synchronous, because they do have their own benefits and drawbacks. So I've also attached a video to this lesson where it says here, how is the English language changing? It's by David Crystal. Now, David Crystal is an excellent linguist, and he's a really famous person who's often suggested as someone to kind of follow on Twitter and read his books and watch his YouTube videos. But he talks about basically how language is changing, but his area of interest has changed from text messages, because back when I was younger, that was the worry that text messages would ruin the English language, to the areas of blogging and vlogging. So what I'd ask you to do is basically to watch the videos and just make a note on those two questions. Why do you think they might be areas which impact upon our language? And do you think they are more likely to impact upon language in a positive or a negative way? So after you've seen the video, spend maybe 5 minutes just responding to those two questions. Once you finish responding to the video, that's the lesson, effectively. That should, as the last one, take you anywhere from about 45 minutes to an hour. As I said earlier, do make sure you read those articles in particular, because they are useful not just for language in the media, because they are examples of language in the media, because they come from newspapers and blogs, but also because they are useful for topical language. Also, any of the ideas that are there, from the positives to the negatives, are just useful to know going forward. They can form the basis of something you look at in your coursework in year 13. You might look at the effect of technology on language, or you might explore WhatsApp chats or email exchanges or some other form of communication, and just look for the patterns and look for the linguistic kind of levels and how they're utilized. It's completely up to you. Hopefully, once again, this has been a really useful video. Obviously, comment if you want to, send me emails if you're not sure, and I'll put another one of these up in the next few days. Okay, bye.